All right. Good morning, ladies. Okay, so my name is Andrea. I am from San Jose, or I live in San Jose with my husband and my two kids. So I have been part of Mops for the past 8 years as a mom, and for the last 10 years as a part of our church. I was on staff as support for Mops, so I was doing all the copies and stuff for the mamas, and then I became a mama and got to be a member. And then for the 2 years leading up to this year, I was the coordinator of our group. So I have been through all of the phases of Mops, many of the roles of Mops. So Mops is so near and dear to my heart. So I am just so blessed that God has chosen to use this broken mess and all of my story that I have been through to come to Mops groups and be the speaker, be the person bringing encouragement. So I'm just so thrilled to be with you here. My husband and kids, I think they're on I'm learning this sliding system. There we go. So my husband, Eric, and I have been married for 12 and a half years, and we have two kiddos. Chloe is 8 and in 3rd grade, and Elliot is 5, going on 6, and in kindergarten. So we have entered in full swing elementary school age. Send help. Okay. Everyone with small babies keeps asking me, does it get easier? And I said, no, it gets different. But hold on, because every phase has its beauties and challenges. Have you guys ever seen the movie Inside Out? Anybody here seen it? I love this movie because it gives us a face with the name of all of these emotions that we have. I just thought it was so clever to give an inside peek into how we're feeling and why we're feeling it and what to do about it. So I love all of these characters, and I think throughout my life and sometimes throughout the course of one day, I experience all of these characters and all of these feelings. On a typical day, I'm pretty much joy. I'm pretty much your happy-go-lucky, almost like positive to a fault kind of person. Like I really try to see the glass half full if I can. That's me on a typical, like when I'm feeling good and when I'm feeling healthy. When I start feeling, when I get into my mothering phase, like when my kids are starting to misbehave or they might be getting in trouble, I'm somewhere between anger and fear. I'm usually angry, like, oh my gosh, don't do that. Oh my gosh, stop doing that. Oh my gosh, don't hurt yourself. But underneath that really is the fear that they're going to get hurt. So usually fear and anger for me kind of come hand in hand and are inseparable. And then sadness really plays the role of like after I've lost my mind on my kids because I'm afraid and therefore I'm angry, then I feel sad because I feel like a bad mom. And I feel like we're saving up the therapy fund already. Anybody else? So, that's like the typical way that these characters play out in my life on a daily basis. So this morning, we're going to be diving into the topics of anxiety and depression. And what I want you to know this morning is that God has designed each of us, each of these feelings and how they play out is God designed. We were meant to have these feelings. They are healthy when we experience them in the way that they were intended to be felt. So our emotions are good. And I think I grew up a lot of my life thinking that my emotions were bad. And I had to figure out how to not feel my emotions or how to cover them up or how to do it differently. And what I've learned is that actually it's not my feelings that are the problem. It's my lack of understanding how to interact with them that's causing me to react in unhealthy ways that make me feel bad about myself. And so I just love this movie putting the faces of these names with us to help us get a grip and better understand these God-designed emotions. And here's the thing about emotions, and here's the thing just about life. Life is hard, right? Life is just hard. And as people, we've already got, things, from our own childhood. Then we get married and we bring that baggage into our marriage. Then we have kids. And then we live perpetually in a 360-degree mirror showing us everything that we are both doing well and doing not so well, right? So we're just put face to face with our worst selves when we become mothers sometimes. So what happens in this world is that it's not as it was intended to be, right? Like there will be a day where everything is made right and all of our tears will be wiped away, and God will restore things as they were intended. But we don't live in that reality yet. So we have to live in this tension, in this middle place where we're waiting for things to be healed, but still living in the pain of holding that. And so what I want you just to remember through this talk is that your emotions are good, they are God-given, but because of this world going out of whack, therefore everything that goes along with it goes out of whack, including our bodies, including our emotions, including our hormones when we become moms. And what I want you to hear more than anything is that you are not alone. Whatever the degree that you're struggling, whatever the severity, you are not alone. So do you ever feel like you're not in control of your own body? Like, do you ever feel like you get to that place where you've just kind of gone into another world where you're like seeing yourself from the outside looking in going, oh my gosh, who is this person and what is she doing? Okay, anybody? I just need to know I'm not alone. Okay. So what I've learned over the years, for me, that looks a lot like fear and worry. When I have gone into that other place, it's because I'm faced with something that I'm afraid of, whether it's my child hurting themselves, or maybe it's my husband's, I feel that he's driving too fast and I'm afraid we're going to get into a car accident. Whatever that thing is, that is our bodies. When we start to feel that way, that's our body's natural reaction. It's called the fight or flight mechanism. And that is a self-preservation mode that God put there to help us when we find ourselves in potentially dangerous situations. We either get this enormous supernatural, superhuman strength to fight for our lives or fight for our children's lives, or we get this supernatural speed to run for our lives and get away from the danger. And many times when we are dealing with depression and anxiety, for most of us, that mechanism is rarely, if ever, turning off. So we're finding ourselves perpetually in this state of just being overwhelmed and afraid and not ever being able to calm down and find a restful moment. And what I want to explain is that the body in its natural form, with these characters, when fear and anger and disgust and sadness come in, there is a healthy space where those are dealt with. And that's the body's natural reaction. When we're dealing with something like anxiety and depression, that's when the body is no longer functioning in its healthy state, but it is functioning in a place of despair where the body is not getting what it needs to balance itself out. So that fight or flight mechanism is not turning off, and that's when things have gone out of whack in our bodies. That's when things are not functioning as they should, and that's why we feel so out of ourselves, so unfamiliar with these feelings because it's not how we were intended to feel. Does that make sense? So a lot of times, anxiety and depression can come on and be triggered. Sometimes it's just inexplicable. There's no reason or rhyme for it. Maybe it's hereditary in your family and it comes through your bloodline. Other times, it can be triggered by dealing with chronic pain. For a person who's in pain all the time, it's very hard to not feel sad or anxious and wondering, am I always going to feel this way? Am I ever going to not be in pain? Sometimes it is triggered by a past event, maybe something in your childhood or early adulthood, a point of pain, a point of abuse. Those things our body remembers and they absorb these things. Even though we might look like a healthy person on the outside, our body might be behind the scenes working in some way that's taking us out of whack and making us feel not like ourselves. And this sense of danger can lurk around every corner for some of us. It's like taking one thing, okay, really over here, my body is trying to process something that happened in my childhood, but what's happening in this moment is I'm afraid that my kid's going to get hurt, and all of those feelings that have been unprocessed are kind of going right into that moment and playing out through these anxiety attacks, or maybe you go the opposite way and you just lose all motivation to even show up for your life. And that happens to us too, where it all just feels like too much. So we're like, oh, I just need to sleep a little bit longer, or I don't think I can make that coffee date or that play date. And we start to hide because we're so unfamiliar and so overwhelmed with what's happening in our bodies. We live in a fallen world, and in a fallen world, things get out of whack. If there was an animated flick about my life, it might look a little bit like this. For me, when I was in college, I began to notice that I wasn't quite feeling myself. I started to notice that I was afraid of getting in the car, driving over a bridge, where that never seemed to bother me anymore. If a friend wanted to go to an amusement park, I was no longer comfortable riding a roller coaster. Things like that, just kind of those things that I hadn't quite been bothered by before were starting to bother me. And then I noticed that it was starting to get a little bit more like I wasn't able to sleep. And if I heard any sound, I would kind of peek up and run up to the front door to make sure it was locked. Things like that I started to notice. And those were in my early 20s. When I got married, it started to transition a little bit deeper into, let's say my husband, who is a teacher, so let's say he's running a few minutes late. In a healthy place, I would be like, oh, he probably just ran into a coworker and was actually having a face-to-face conversation with another human being. This is a good thing. Perhaps he had a few extra tests to grade that night, and so he was just running a little bit late. In my healthy place, I would just go to those assumptions. In my unhealthy, anxiety-ridden place, I would go to, oh my gosh, he hasn't texted me yet. He must have gotten into an accident. He's dead. And I can laugh about that now, but I'll tell you, ladies, in that moment, it was really, by the time he got home, I was like, why didn't you call me? I was scared to death. I was going to call the hospital. Anybody else? Anyway, okay, I just need to know. I'm not alone. That's where my mind was going. It was just things were just getting really overwhelming. So then I would feel depressed, and I would feel so upset with myself. Why am I getting so upset? This is normal. People run late. It's not a big deal. So I would get depressed, and I would begin to overeat. And then it would be like, oh, wow, I really should get some exercise. I love this. So, stretch. Okay, that'll do. So I was noticing definitely I am an emotional eater. So this became something that I was recognizing about myself. By the time our kids came along, Elliot was about 1 and Chloe was about 3, and I had just stopped weaning Elliot, and this is when I really started to notice my body go really out of whack. And those fears and those anxieties were building up so much that I really began to hate myself. I thought, well, I'm just a horrible mom. I'm always on edge. I'm always grumpy. I'm always afraid of something. Who wants to be around me? Who needs me as a mom? What do I have to offer? And I really, on the outside looking in, no one could really see it. But on the inside, it just felt like darkness. It felt like hopelessness. And this is as a person of faith. And I had really begun to doubt. You can go to that next slide. I can really begin to doubt God's goodness in my life, and even just my faith. How can I feel this way and know God? This doesn't make any sense. This is the total opposite. If I know God, I should know his hope and his peace in the middle of this trial. Yet, I'm praying every day, and I'm not finding relief from these problems. They actually seem to be getting bigger, and they seem to be getting worse. And on the inside, this darkness just started to take over and just left me baffled and ashamed and really confused. And I was connected in community. I had been in a Mops group, but it was very sporadic. Every year you change tables, and I had been really too afraid to be vulnerable. So I hadn't really connected in community that much until that point. So there wasn't really anyone who knew me well enough to be like, time out, something's wrong. So really on the outside, how are you doing, Andrea? Look at your beautiful family. Look at your life. You've got the house, you've got the husband, you've got the kids. You get to stay home. I'm fine. I'm fine. But really, what that translated to for me was I'm feeling like a nobody to everybody. And I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to reach out about this. How do I put this on the table? What is anybody supposed to do with this? I'm a mess. And it had become so dark in my mind, and that out of whackness had gotten so wacky that I truly believed in my heart that my family would be better off without me if I just disappeared. My husband would be happier with a different wife. My kids would be happier and better off with a different mom. I truly believed that. I didn't know what to do about it. I thankfully wasn't suicidal where I wanted to take my life. I just wanted to disappear, if that makes sense. And that was a very dark season for me. If you can go to that next slide, please. There's a verse in the Bible, and I love this verse. It's Matthew 6:22, and it says this. This is a Message translation. The eye is the lamp that provides light to the body. When your eye is healthy, the whole body fills up with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your eye is filled up with darkness. And I love this verse so much because it speaks to exactly this. It speaks to those characters from Inside Out, that those God-given feelings and emotions that when we're functioning as we were meant to, we can keep those in check and we can keep them balanced and we can function when we feel them. We can move forward when we feel angry. We can move forward. But when we are unhealthy, when our bodies have turned out of that healthy place and into that unhealthy place, we're no longer to see clearly. Because this veil is put over our eyes. For me, it was this veil of darkness that the world would be better off if you weren't in it. Your family would be better off if you weren't there. You're screwing everybody up. You're bringing everybody down with you. And my eyes were just covered in this darkness, and I wasn't able to get out from under it. I was praying. I was, doing all the essential oils and all of the herbal remedies and trying to change my eating habits, which was really hard. And what I can see now that I could not see then, that I did not understand, is that I was dealing with a disease. It wasn't all just inside of me. And on this next slide, we'll see things like this, things of the heart, things of the soul, things that are not outward in appearance. They are very hard to understand from the outside looking in. My poor husband, my poor math-brained logic husband could not make sense of this. 1 + 1 does not equal 2 here. What is happening? Why are you feeling this way? Why don't you trust me? What have I, he was beginning to feel offended because, you're driving the car too fast. I'm afraid you're going to kill us all. And he's like, do you not know me? Do you not trust me? I'm like, this actually has nothing to do with you. This is all inside of my head. And that's very hard to understand for someone who is not personally going through something like anxiety, depression, or loss. And from the inside looking out, it feels impossible to explain, doesn't it? How do I put this into words? I had no words. The only words I had was shame and shame and shame and confusion. I didn't know what to do with it myself, so how was I supposed to explain it to someone else? And so that picture up there, that's what my family looked like when I hit rock bottom. I don't know if you can see that. My little guy, oh my God, he had all the curls and he has auburn hair. It's just scrumptious. He's about 1. Like I mentioned, he had just weaned from breastfeeding, and then my daughter there, she's about 3. This was the month that my world came crashing down. And this is my beautiful family. So it's very hard to understand from the outside looking in. How can you feel like your family would be better off without you? Look at that. Look how happy you are. But on the inside, what it felt like was I don't know if you can see the anchor there. It says my brain, and it's got me anchored, and it's pulling me down because my brain was not functioning the way it was meant to. It was out of whack. It was unhealthy. It was diseased. So while on the outside, I can show up and I'm dressed and I'm out in society and I've got my kids and we all made it to Target for an outing, because that's a victory. On the inside, I'm drowning. So it's very hard to explain from the inside looking out and very hard to understand from the outside looking in. And with all of our best intentions, I think we try to help, and on this next slide, we'll see maybe some of the unhelpful ways that we try to relate, like, why are you so sad? Just, change your perspective. Just be more confident. Why can't you just cheer up? It's all in your head. One of the biggest fights my husband and I have ever had, he was like, that's just crazy. Oh, no, you didn't. Now we can laugh about these things, but I was like, you need to eliminate that word from your vocabulary for the end of time. Because I already feel like I'm going crazy, and I already feel ashamed of how I feel, so don't you dare call me crazy. I already know what's going on. But we try with all of our best efforts to understand, and we fail. And so what I really want you to understand this morning and to know and to be encouraged is that you don't have to personally relate to someone's pain to be able to hold their hand while they do the hard work of healing. Around this table, we don't have to personally relate and say, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because we really don't know what to do we? We feel lost. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to help. And for me, I think the greatest thing is just to be there and just be like, I don't understand, but I want to hold your hand while you figure it out. And I want to help hold you up while you go through this journey. Because here's the truth, ladies. Anxiety and depression are diseases to be treated, not choices to feel ashamed of. I did not know that. For like years. So I kept these horrid feelings. This darkness was just overtaking me for so long that I got to the point where I felt like my family would be better off without me. And now I realize, oh my goodness, I can do something about this. This is not just me being crazy. This is my body gone out of whack, and there are things to do about it. People have written books about this stuff. Doctors have gone to school. Medications have been developed to help. Oh my goodness. So, back in that picture, my world comes crashing down. It was a Mops morning. It was raining that morning, so I was already a little, driving in the car. It's already a trigger for me. But we had gone to Mops. We had gotten home. I had gotten the kids down for their nap. They're 1 and 3, so they were still napping. Hallelujah. Now they go to school all day, so it's different. But I had just gotten them down for their nap, and I had already felt that morning something's off. Something's just not right. And once I got the kids down, my in-laws live very close by. So I had texted my father-in-law, who was retired at that time, and said, if you don't mind, maybe just check in on me later, or maybe just pop over for a visit. I'm just kind of feeling off. And by the time I hit send on that message, something happened to my body. And I mean, it was like a flush of heat and numbness, and my heart started pounding so hard. It was like my hands are going numb, and I just stood there freaking out. Oh my God, I must be having a heart attack. And I didn't know what to do. I was just stunned at what was happening, but I heard my dog barking. And what that was cue, the mail person was there. So all I could do was get my body from my living room to my front door, open the door, and scream for help. Please help me, call 911. I can't breathe. I think I'm having a heart attack. How fun would you like to be that mail lady that day? This poor woman. So I just sat down in the door frame of my door. I was able to get my husband on the phone, and I just said, I don't know what's happening. I'm scared. I can't breathe. How fun would that phone call be? So they rushed me to the hospital via ambulance, do the whole ER thing, but everything is fine. Your EKG is fine. Your blood levels are fine. And then they do the most wonderful thing. Ma'am, are you stressed? Why, yes, I am indeed. I have a 1 and a 3-year-old. What is your other question? And I felt so ashamed. And I felt so confused. And it was like more shame and confusion. 3 weeks before this had happened, I had begun to notice these symptoms. So we have this private Facebook group, which I imagine you guys do too, the private Mops Facebook group. And so I had just one afternoon, I just felt God saying, you know what, Andrea, put yourself out there. Just reach out. Somebody has to understand or be going through something similar in a group of, 90 women. Somebody's got to know. So I did. I put out a post and I said, hey, I'm not feeling quite right. Here are some of my symptoms. Anybody else relating to this? Anybody got something for me? And you guys, that thread went on for days. And several people private messaged me. And one of those people was a friend of mine who had just begun interning at one of our local Christian counseling centers. And she messaged me privately, and she just said, it sounds like you are going through a really hard time. And I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but if you ever find that you want to talk to somebody about it, I've met some amazing counselors here, and here are their names and phone numbers, just in case you need it. 3 weeks later, I have this attack. I feel like I'm literally going to die. My kids are going to wake up from their nap and find me on the floor. Terrifying. But I'm told by the ER that I'm fine. So I'm hopeless. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I think I'll give that lady a call. And I didn't have to go searching. I already had a name in my back pocket from 3 weeks ago from a friend. And so that attack happened on a Friday morning. I was sitting in her office on Monday morning. And whereas the ER had no answers for me, we had spoken on the phone very briefly, just to explain, why I wanted to come in. And she just hands me a piece of paper. She goes, based on what we talked about on the phone, here's some information. And she hands me this sheet of paper, and at the top it says, generalized anxiety disorder. She says, just take a look at this, see if anything resonates with you. So I began looking at the paper as I'm sitting on her comfy couch. Check. Whoa, check. Every single thing was a check mark. She says, I think you had a panic attack. I mean, just those words, they changed my whole life because I realized, okay, number one, I'm not crazy. And number two, the body, when it goes into a fight or flight mode and can't get out, it will do wonky things to try to go into survival mode. But I didn't know this. So I began to see this woman every week for the next year and a half. And I began to learn what's anxiety and realizing that I also, on the flip side of anxiety, usually comes depression. Because we feel so much shame for what we don't understand, we get depressed about it. And we lose motivation to interact with people because we feel so confused and confusing. We feel like we are too much to be handled. So I began seeing this woman every week for a year and a half. And through that year and a half, as much as I was learning, I was still struggling with a 1 and a 3-year-old. I mean, help. I mean, that's hard enough, right? For a healthy person from a healthy family with all the help in the world, that is hard. But from an unhealthy person, from an unhealthy family, with all of these things going on, that felt impossible. So through this time, she really started to encourage me to talk with a psychiatrist about medication. And I was like, nope, No, 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 no. I'm a Christian. I'm going to pray my way through this. I'm going to essential oil my way through this. I'm going to herb my way through this, girl. Okay? Because that was for me the mark that I had failed. I don't know why. I don't know why. Why is that? But for me, that was the mark that I had failed. So for a full-on year, 12 months, I, worked it through, avoiding this topic. And finally, one day, she just sat me down. And she was not pushy. She was just trying to help me understand my options. Okay, Andrea, here's the deal. You've weighed all the cons. I was afraid of the side effects. I was already feeling so vulnerable. I didn't want to go on something that could potentially make me more suicidal. That doesn't sound like a good idea. Okay, Andrea, we've weighed the cons. What about the pros? What if it works? What if it helps you? So I gathered up all my wit. I called Kaiser Psychiatry Department, and I made an appointment. I was so afraid. As a person of faith, I just thought they were going to laugh at me and shame me and be like, okay, yeah, God, okay, how's that working for you, girl? They were so respectful. They listened to me to say, I'm a person of faith, so I've prayed about this, and I'm still having trouble, and that's hard for me. And they were so respectful. And the woman, I did end up going on the medication, and they were so amazing. They checked in with me every few days at first, and then it became weeks and then months as I adjusted to the medication. And I mean, within that first week or two, it's like I was me again. I had just forgotten what normal, whatever that is, felt like. And all of a sudden I could breathe. And all of a sudden these thoughts, these terrible thoughts that had just been bombarding me for all of these months and even years, the volume started to turn down. And I was like, wow, look at that. And it just became clear to me for the first time that there was no shame in having to take a medication to help balance my body's serotonin levels that balance out my fight or flight mechanism. I feel no shame in taking a thyroid medication for my thyroid that does not work. It makes me fluffy. Why do I feel ashamed to take a medication to help my brain function? My brain, which is the most important organ that needs to function well. So I just want to encourage you again. I just want you to know, friend, if you are struggling today, you are not alone, and there is absolutely no shame in reaching out for help in whatever form that looks like. For some of you, I know that you're holding very deep pain. I know this month, with October being Infant and Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month, I know if there are 1 in 4 women that experience this, let's look around this room. I am so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry. And I hope that you find comfort in the sisterhood that you are forming here to be able to bring those hurts and that pain to the table, to let a sister hold your hand as you heal. We will never have enough words. We will never have the right words. We will never be able to bring enough meals. We will never be able to watch your kids long enough to make that pain go away. But we are here to just do this life together. So some of us are holding that inexplicable pain. And I just want all of us to know that we can move forward. As hard as this life gets, and as much pain comes our way that seems like it will debilitate us, there are things we can do to move forward. And the first thing I want to encourage you is to connect in community. For me, that was the first step. Knowing, being involved in my Mops group, even though I didn't have a BFF yet, I was able to post on that page and get the name of a counselor I was in her office just like that. That was like this, that at that top level of friendship, of just community. There are amazing resources in this group of women. I just know looking at you, each of you have so many amazing gifts to offer. Bring them to this table. Then when we go down to that next level of around these tables, and as we get into more intimate friendships, that's when we start to begin to know each other well enough where we can speak in to say, wow, Andrea, I'm just noticing. How are you really doing? Let's go down a little further. Let's not stay surface level, excuse me. Let's go down. What's really underneath there? And she might not be able to understand anything that I'm saying. Like I didn't have words for it yet. But be there. Be that friend that asks, how are you really doing? So what we want to do here is we want a safe place to bring our true selves to the table and our joys, not just our pain. But we need a safe place to bring those vulnerable places, pieces of ourselves. We also need to provide that safe space. If we want to receive it, we have to provide it. So make this a safe space. Sometimes the best thing we can do is nothing at all. It's just to be there. So connect in community. I want you to ask for resources through your church or through your hospital. Jenny was gracious enough on your handout there, on the sheets there, on your tables. She's given the name of the lady here at this church at New North who is over moms and the care ministry. So she would be an excellent person to reach out to, whether it's anxiety and depression, whether it's marital tension, whether it's pain from your past. She would be a great resource to reach out to, and she can then direct you to the appropriate resource for you. One of the other resources on there is a group called Bay Area Life Skills, and that was another thing that helped me tremendously in dealing with all the pain from my childhood and how that had seeped into my adulthood and stunted me, where I was actually a 12-year-old living in a 35-year-old's body. And many of us are dealing with that. Many of us have been stunted in our growth as adults because of things that have happened in our childhood. And life skills goes right into the heart of those things. It's like an intensive 12-week class. That was a tremendous area of growth for me in learning how to manage my emotions and my feelings and to go deeper in order to do more healing. So there is an email and phone number there. Amazing resource for you. Your hospitals, like for me, I'm with Kaiser. They offered a 12-week topical program specifically for people with anxiety and depression. Amazing resource. So just realize there are many amazing resources out there for you to help you heal. And then if you've reached all of those, feel free to talk to a professional. There is no shame in that game, sister. We all, honestly, if I had realized how amazing therapy was, I would have started 20 years ago. Why is there a stigma around this? I don't get it. Let's be the generation that drops the stigma and walks into our healing. Okay, so how do we support a friend going through this? So that was for you who are struggling. Those were some next steps for you. How do you support a friend? If you're not personally struggling, or maybe you're a little further along on your healing journey, you're not quite as vulnerable right now. How do you support a friend? My very best advice is to show up and listen and don't try to fix anything. Your words will probably not help fix anything, but you being there and you holding that sister's hand as she walks her journey, and then as she's able to vocalize and put words to her pain, then you can just begin to have conversations. But don't try to fix her. Just let her get it out. Let her know that she has a safe place to bring her real, vulnerable, messy stuff to the table. And then remember that you don't have to personally relate or have gone through it to hold that friend's hand as she does the hard work of healing, because it is hard. And most of the time, as it was for me, it's going to get a lot harder before it gets better. We have to go a lot deeper into our pain so that we really get down to the root before we start seeing the growth. But once you start seeing the growth, oh my goodness, you guys, it's incredible. And when I look at my life, and I've looked at someone like walking into a room like this 5 years ago, terrifying. You couldn't have paid me enough money to get up on this stage. Really and truly. I would have walked in and said, oh, you're prettier than I am. You're a better mom than I am. Oh, you have a better marriage than I do. I am not qualified. Who am I to help anybody? Yet God took this broken mess and piece by piece began to put me back together. And what he showed me through that process is that he can do anything and he can heal anyone. And then once we experience that hope and that healing, we can then go on to help others find hope and healing in their lives. He can use anybody. Anybody. Friend, you are not alone in this process. I know we're all over the map here with our faith and with our feelings about God. But I believe the Bible is true, and I believe that God says, when he says he will never leave us or forsake us, I believe that. And you are not alone, friend. God says this in his word in Isaiah 41:10. This is one of my favorite Bible verses. He says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you." That's a promise. I will help you. That is a promise. And I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. What that means is God's like, see this arm right here? That's my strong arm. And nothing that you face, I'm going to be holding you up. And nothing that you face will ever pull you out of my hands. Nothing. There is nothing too hard, too ugly, too gross, too shameful. I have got you. So do not fear. That's the big picture, right? Where we can put our hope and find our healing. The thing is that God doesn't, I'm praying, God, please take this away. Come on, loosen up. Give me a break. Please take this away. I'll do anything. And what I realized through this process was that God does not promise to take away our pain and our problems. Dang it. That is hard. That's challenging. He does not promise to take away our pain or our problems. He promises to be with us through them. Because this life is not what it's intended, and we are in this middle place of waiting for Jesus to make all things right, we have to live in this pain with these problems right now, but we do not do it alone. God has not left us alone to fight that battle. He strengthens us, he helps us, and he upholds us. And then he equips us to do the same for each other. He equips us and he gives us himself to say, sister, I want to help strengthen you. I want to help you. I want to help hold you up as you go through this tumultuous time. So as we find hope and healing, we become a source of hope and healing to others. Mops has been one of the greatest examples of this for me in my life. I will forever be a supporter of Mops because this is where I found my sisterhood. This is where I found my 3 a.m. friends. This is where this weekend when my husband and I made an appointment on the same day at the same time and our parents are out of town, I called a friend in panic. Can you take my kids for 2 hours tomorrow? Yes, I can. And all the mamas said, amen. Mops is where I found those women. Another place where I found this was through an organization called Compassion International. One of the most beautiful things when we start to find the hope and healing from our own journey, and then we begin to extend it out, one of the most amazing things happened. For me, through Mops, I went from being this, terrified, insecure, unworthy woman to now being a leader in my field, to now being a writer, soon to be an author, someone who God is using I'm just me. That is God. That is what God can do. That is what sisterhood can do. And community, it strengthens you and it pulls you up. But that was 5 years in the making. 5 years, you guys. It doesn't happen overnight. So if you're in the middle of it, keep going. I promise you. You will have scars, but the wounds will begin to heal. And those scars will then be the thing that God uses to help you bring hope and healing to the world. Through Mops, and then around the world through Compassion. The first time we had met our sponsor child, it was Mother's Day, 2013. I was pregnant with Elliot. And our church usually, hands out like a little flower at the end of, service. Here's a carnation for you, and thank you and love you. Bye. This year, however, they had decided to bring in Compassion International. How many of you guys have heard of Compassion International? They're a child sponsorship organization that you get to help bring them out of poverty. You make a $38 monthly gift, but then the most beautiful thing is you exchange these letters. And so it was Mother's Day. They bring in Compassion, and they have all these tables outside. They help us understand what Compassion is, who they are, and gave us an opportunity to sponsor a child. So there's children all over the world, and this organization is partnering in local communities to bring the tangible needs, food, clothing, shelter, education. And what you realize is it's not just that child that's being impacted, it's their family, and then it's their community. And some of these children have gone on to become world changers because someone took the time to reach out and offer them hope and to say, I believe in you, even though your circumstances are pretty messy, even though you were born into a pretty out of whack situation, I'm going to love on you. So we walked outside to an array of packets. There are some on your tables, and there are some over here on this table there. And we just started perusing. And then we saw Wendy. She was only 8 years old at that time. She was wearing this sweet little blue dress, and we just knew, Wendy Esmeralda. She was meant to be ours. And so we filled out a little form, took her packet with us, and a few weeks later, we had our first letter from Wendy. We got to know about her family, and that's been all these years now. Last October, at a Mops meeting just like this, we met our second sponsor child. That's Ruben. Is he not just the most adorable? I just can't with his little tennis shoes. My girlfriend had a packet at her table, and she runs over to me. He has he's very close in age to our son, our 5-year-old son. And, oh my gosh, Andrea, look at this guy. And I just looked at his little face and just knew he's meant to be ours. And through this process, we get these letters every month. You guys, I just can't. We get to send them money for their birthdays. We send money so that the people that are working most closely with them can get them what they need and then also get them some things that they want. And it's things like when they sent us the letter most recently, I apologize. It was like they had a little table filled with things, and it was like groceries mostly. I'm like, okay, if my kids got 25 extra bucks for their birthday, they wouldn't be going out and buying a loaf of bread. And it just puts things in perspective for me. It makes me realize that God takes care of the most broken and the most vulnerable, and I get to participate in that. And it has completely changed the dynamic of our family, and it's helped us, even in the middle of our own mess, to be able to know every month we get these letters, and now my daughter is 8, and she can write, so she writes the letters, and it's so fun. And it's just been one of the most healing things for me as I have begun to heal. And even as I was healing, I wasn't all healed up yet when we took this on. But it's helped me. It's given me so much perspective to know that God can use anybody at any time to bring hope and healing into the world. So I'm just going to encourage you just to pray about it. Take a look at the packets on your table. I have my friend Lisa with me this morning. She is a mentor mom from my Mops group, and we'll be over here happy to answer any questions. But I just want to encourage you to sponsor a child today, to not only be a safe place in this Mops community, being a safe place of sisterhood, to be vulnerable, to bring your vulnerable real self, to lay space for someone else to bring her vulnerable self, and then to also, throughout the reaches of the world, to offer hope and healing to a child or some children in need. I have a prayer I'm going to pray over you this morning, and it's also written on your handout there for you to take home. Lord Jesus, I just pray in the knowledge for each of these moms, in the knowledge that it's hard to understand things from the outside looking in. And it's hard to explain things from the inside looking out. May we give each other grace. May we give ourselves grace as we fumble through learning what it means to ask for help and to offer help. May we provide a safe place for our sisters to bring their burdens, their pains, their confusion, and their doubts as they do the hard work of healing. And above all, may we remember that we do not go at this alone. Lord, you have promised to be with us no matter what we face. And we have the strength of this sisterhood to lean into through the joys and challenges of this life. Lord, I pray for each woman here, Lord, no matter where she stands in her knowledge and understanding or feelings about you. Lord, whether or not she's a new mom or has a few kids that are older. Lord, I pray that each mom can bring her real, true self to the table this morning and know that she has a safe place to do that. There are no wrong answers, Lord. And there is nothing too vulnerable for you, God. So may you strengthen us, Lord, and give us wisdom as we learn how to be friends. Lord, as we learn how to hold each other up, to help each other and strengthen each other as we accept that from you. And may that go on to trickle down, Lord, into our families, into our workplaces, and throughout the world, love, that your hope and healing would be known and accepted. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, ladies. Sorry, I know I went over a little bit. Do you still want to do some of the Q&A, or do you want to skip it?
So we're going to, since we have some extra time today, we're going to do some Q&A. So we're going to open up the floor. If anybody wants to ask Andrea some questions that maybe she can answer. So if you have any questions, just raise your hands and I'll run over with the mic.
Awesome.
We'll have like 10 minutes, so don't keep waiting. 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And overcoming some of these negative thoughts, like what was most helpful to get to the other
Some of like the tangible tools. I mean, honestly, I think sometimes just getting it out there and hearing it said back to you, it's like miraculously and awkwardly simply healing in and of itself. Hearing someone say, okay, I'm just going to repeat back what I just heard you say. I feel like a bad mom. And then when I heard it back to me, I was like, oh, well, dang. I don't really feel quite that bad, you know. So part of that was the talk. A lot of it, it wasn't really until I started on the medication that my body started to function and help me take in what I was learning and begin to practice it. So as I did that, honestly, the topical study that I did, or the topical class that I did through my hospital, was one of the most helpful. And we talked about assertiveness, about learning how to ask for what you need in a confident but, caring way, not demanding what you need out of fear or anger, but learning how to ask for what you need, so learning how to set boundaries. That was very helpful within the dynamic of my family with my husband, to say, okay, here's what triggered, when you say this, then I feel this. And learning how to take that out beyond just myself. We talked about sleep habits. So sleep is undoubtedly like the number one thing that you can do. Like when there was I wish I had that scale, but it was like a chart of like, here's the most helpful. Sleep was like 80% of the problem. But how many of us are actually getting good sleep? Like, I don't remember the last time I got a good night's, didn't wake up feeling tired still. But having a routine, having a rhythm. And then we did do a lot of like physical exercises of like the belly breathing and things like that. Getting up and walking early in the morning for me, I think part of it was learning how to find what helped you find a place of rest. But to be honest, a lot of it was the medication, because my brain was so far in another place and was so unhealthy that I was just, everything was not right. So I think that really helped. But learning the techniques, and then through life skills, we talked a lot about our emotions and how it's learning that anger is a secondary emotion. So it's really learning to identify, what am I actually feeling? So it's a lot of self-reflection. It's a lot of getting in and trying to better understand what's really going on so that you can attack that. Rather than just the stuff that's going on, all the symptoms, you're really getting down into the depths of it. And I think for me, personally, it was a lot of my identity. It was from the womb, really. I was an unplanned birth. My childhood was very, so I think a lot of that for me was tackling the deep down stuff that I didn't realize how deep it went. So is that helpful? Any takeaways there? Put me on the spot, friend.
Andrea, you mentioned belly breathing. Is it possible to practice that with everyone?
Ooh. See, Lisa is a coach. She is fantastic. This is,
Well, there's a reason. Your brain, you talked about fight or flight. And when we get in that place, our breathing becomes shallow. And our focus narrows. And we are not ourselves.
yeah.
So learning the belly breathing interferes with your brain theory.
Yeah. I mean, the best way to do this is lying down, but we're not going to do that. So you really have to just let it all hang out, friends. And my belly is my biggest struggle. Asset. It's where my babies were housed. Okay. So really, if you are laying down, that's the best way to practice. But you just put your hands on your belly. And you really just push out as far as you can, and you get all the breath out that you can. And then you hold that 4 or 5 seconds. And then you're going to breathe in and pull all that air back in, fill your lungs all the way up. Take a few seconds, hold that, and then breathe back out. There are several methods. There are several apps on your phone. There's a Calm, C-A-L-M. That's one of the best ones that I've found for helping, walking you through some breathing exercises, even some meditative practices of just slowing down your thoughts. Sometimes what we can do is one of the best techniques is a grounding technique of, what do I see, what do I hear, what do I smell, and what do I feel? So if you find yourself kind of getting into where you know you're going to have a panic attack, or you feel yourself, you can start to do that exercise and say, okay, I hear birds chirping. And it might feel really silly at first, but it is really doing exactly that. It's getting you out of that narrow, because when you start to do that shallow breathing, then all you can think of is, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you know. And so when we start to slow our breathing through the breathing exercises, and then find another focal point, something around us, or, you know, something tangible like thinking putty, all those kind of things. My number one is music. Like, if I am grumpy and my kids are losing their minds, like, out comes the Trolls soundtrack, out comes the Sing soundtrack. I'm serious, y'all. And we just bust it. We bust a move. If we're home, we just start a dance party in the living room. I mean, like, really, mid-fight. Like, all right, stop, time out, put on the music. Or in the car on the way to school. We have a 25-minute commute to school. Help me. Some days it's beautiful. Other days, my children are for sale, you know? But music. So make yourself a playlist that you just have, like, right there. Usually for me, almost immediately. If I can put on some music, I can start to slow down and reprocess. Don't be shy. Hi.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. I hope so.
Can you discuss how your husband was brought into your treatment?
Great question. In the beginning, I love it. No, and I think that's very important. In the beginning, really most of it was just me going and then coming home and we talk about everything. So we would just talk about, okay, here's what this and here's what that. And he would, sometimes begin to understand. There was, however, just so much that he didn't understand and that I didn't feel. I was like, I feel like I'm saying it as clearly as I can. So I did bring him to a few sessions. And I think that was helpful because he was more like, all right, we're at A. We're trying to get to B. What's the steps? Boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, I wish it was that simple. And for some people, it might be. Like there are all kinds of, there's a tapping. What is that one called, Lisa? Do you remember? The tapping. I've heard amazing things. I did not personally do that, but I've heard great things. But I think what, more so than him being able to do anything to say to me, it was more learning what not to say, being honest. And just learning, really, it was just kind of a general communication rule of like, I'm not telling you this so you can fix me. I'm telling you this to share it with you, and I need to get it out, and I need to verbalize it. And so that helped us, I think, a lot when he came with me and he was like, all right, we're at A, we need to get to B. I was like, that's not really how this is working. So really it was just helping us in our marriage to be able to realize, okay, like I need to be able to say, I just need you to listen. Or to say, okay, I need your help. Would you help give me some feedback here? And just another one of those tools. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. I'm a therapist, so for me,
Oh.
I always, and as a therapist, I've been to therapy with my spouse regarding
Okay.
marital stuff.
Yeah.
And I love going in there and the husband having their top 3 things. We want to
Oh.
this, and this.
Yep.
The therapist and I just sit back and, slow clap. And bravo, bring the champagne.
I love it.
And watch it all. Oh, that's beautiful. So I just wanted others to know that he does have to get into that. He does
Yeah.
have to be part of your experience and how you handle it.
Well, because it's such a big part of who you are. It's such a big thing that you're holding. And at that point, you can't separate yourself from it yet. I can't say, okay, I'm Andrea and I'm struggling with anxiety and depression. At that point, it was like, hi, I'm anxiety and depression and I'm too much.
Okay, so we're gonna thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome. And I just wanted to give a quick note. If anyone does want to talk to me about compassion, I also have, I made some T-shirts to go along with my thing. So it has reframe, and then it has that Bible verse on the back, the Matthew verse about your eyes bringing light into your body. But the compassion, it's just a little tag right on there where you fill out your info and you give that to me, and then you take the packet home. But happy to answer any questions after discussion time for any of you. So thank you.